Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Ron. It's Sunday morning, the after 11. Uh, I listened to the video from yesterday lesson because I wasn't able to attend and have a couple questions about that. But first, I want to see if anyone else has questions or comments about yesterday or anything else you may have uh, grabbed your attention. Okay. Um, I have one other observation rather that I've kind of bothered me a little bit. I think as we grow and transform into who we are, what we are going to be, uh, we become more sensitive to things that we see and things that we hear, especially the violent things. And one of the things I've noticed that in the last couple of weeks, and I don't know if anybody else has noticed it or given any thought to it. Have you noticed the increase in violence of females committing very violent crimes? And white and black, of course, but particularly what got my attention were black females. Has anyone noticed that, or do you have any thoughts on that? And again, I know it, at least I think it does. It goes to what we've been discussing about things having to be uncovered, things being revealed. But what does that say to you, if anything?
Ron, would you mind repeating your question again, please?
Yeah, I was talking about the violence that has been uh, in the news from females, women committing violent crimes. It seemed to be either it's in the increase or it may just be coincidentally in the last couple of weeks that there have been several cases of it. Uh, and I just wonder if anybody else noticed it or what does that mean to you. Uh, there were several cases of violence, but two in particular that got my attention were women killing their moms, and I thought that was just gross. I don't, you know, all of it is terrible, but how do you kill your mother? And it happened on two different occasions, and it just something that got my attention.
Ron, I don't know. I hadn't really followed the females um, in the killing, but I know something that's bothered me is just how easy people are killing now. It's just over petty things you could walk away from, whether it be someone knocking on the wrong door or having an argument that shouldn't escalate that high. But it just seems like there's a heightened in some segments. We hear more of that versus the loving stories of kindness, which are still happening. But I'm amazed at how quickly some people are triggered here recently.
Yeah, yeah. And that's I just agree with. I think it's just important we notice things and give voice to it. I guess on one occasion there was a young lady, and I say young lady because she was in her 40s, that killed her mom and got her daughter to help her cut the body up and try to destroy it on the barbecue grill. Uh, the other one was a case where a 14-year-old killed her mom because she took her cell phone and again tried to hide the body. And hiding the body to me, and or trying to destroy the body, just speaks to the insensitivity of it. And the I guess although those were not the only two cases, those got my attention because those were Black women, and we don't usually see that kind of violence against our own mothers. Uh, so just kind of shows you where we are, and when we talk about all the time spirituality and what we're dealing with, uh, it's a lot darker, I think, sometimes than we realize.
Ron, I believe that what you are describing is a response to what's in society, period. The society perpetuates violence. And what I mean by that is, like Ash was talking about, for knocking on the wrong door or shooting someone through the door, the killing of the mothers, as you spoke of. This society intentionally increases an environment to perpetuate violence. When you have when you have states that pass gun laws that gives you the right to shoot somebody and hide behind, stand your ground. Example, the woman getting shot through the door, the lady was not arrested until there was a protest. And the law clearly states that you have to feel threatened is one of the aspects of that law. And there was no way for her to feel threatened behind a locked door, have an opportunity to call the police, but they still did not arrest her. The laws that are passed that give you privilege to carry a gun without training, without a permit. This is the perpetuation of violence in the society. In this society, violence is also glorified. Look at what happened when the kid, I forget his last name, Ron, whatever his name is, killed the two guys with an AR-15, and the judge was his attorney from the bench, making sure that he did not get convicted, making him a hero. So I don't see it quite like that as the two Black women. No, it is not something that we normally would see. However, we do always see a response to the predominant attitude of the society. If for example, you allow people to kill policemen on January 6th and no one gets charged with manslaughter, they get charges for rioting or for entering government property without permission, as opposed to being accessory to manslaughter or murder or something of that nature, because all of them were involved in it. And the law, hand of one is the hand of all. And that was not used in this case. So what are we saying? It is not just the people who are, quote unquote, on the right or the white supremacists who are perpetuators of violence. It is also those who are currently in office, because they are not pushing for violence to be punished on a grander scale than what it is. And it is almost like it is government-sanctioned violence. And when you have that kind of attitude, it bleeds into society. And that is the reason that it filters down to the to people being killed for seemingly no reason at all. The small infraction or no infraction at all, someone is getting killed for that. So I don't see it as an issue that is representative of any group of people, I see it as representative of the attitude of the government itself, not just state government, but the federal government as well. I'm done. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. When it comes to violence, studies have shown that females are just as much prone to violence as males. And my source of information comes from Time Magazine, Christian Science Monitor, and there was an article that was written on a figure skater that she brutally attacked another figure skater. I forgot her name. And also states that have passed the same-sex marriage, the female with the female, they get more criminal domestic violence calls with the female than the male with the male. Also, as it relates to violence, crimes against the elderly and crimes against children, at one time, and it may be still true, yet at one time, the black female led that. So when it comes to violence, females are just as much prone to violence as males. Thank you.
And I agree with your statistics, George. However, when we look, what we are looking at is from an overall spiritual perspective. And that perspective from which we are looking at it, at least I hope we are anyway, is what is the source of it? There has to be a source before there is an action. So what is the root of it all? And from what I'm seeing, the root of it all is the power seat, is government. And if the attitude changes from rulership, then that began to change the attitudes in the people as well. Because regardless of what we think or feel, people respond based upon who they are covered by. And the covering is, in this nation has always been a covering of violence. And the perpetuator of the violence, be it male or female, in regards to the spiritual aspects of it, does not matter. What matters is that the violence occurs, and the source of the violence being determined does not speak to us just to show us what the source is. It is shown to us, and we're in this discussion about it because, quite frankly, the creator, the one who created us, is not going to do anything about it. It is incumbent upon us to do what is necessary in order to bring it to a resolution or a place of change. And that place of change, it does not come into view until or unless we are the ones who are the agents of that change. Does that make sense?
Well, Reb, but one thing I'll add to that is I do feel that when our society removed the African American male out of the house by welfare, that was a major, that kind of stunted our growth. And that's more than opinionated. And it took away a certain balance out of the household. But nonetheless, when the soil that we lived on or we live on was consumed by violence, so violence is in the earth. it's just real important that we shouldn't act like that. The movies, the Lethal Weapon, all those movies, they're violent, and we are attracted to it. Even on the interstates, an accident can be on the eastbound side. Yet on the westbound side, you would think we would be moving. Now we got to stop and see stuff. So that's just my contention on it. Thank you.
You just, George, when you start talking about how males were taken out of the household, who did that? The government. When you talk about our attraction to violence, why are we attracted to violence? Because violence is perpetuated by this nation. We have such a love for guns in this nation until it is baffling to the rest of the world, even though some of those countries who are baffled by it have a tendency that leans toward violence as well. We are just the worst. And I do believe that the violence that we are dealing with in this nation is because of the violent nature of those who are in charge. Does that make sense? Hello?
Yes, that does.
Now to continue that, keep in mind that this nation was brought into existence by violent men, prisoners who were sent from England, murderers, thieves, rapists. That's who populated this country, especially South Carolina, Georgia, and the parts of the coast of North Carolina. So it is interwoven in the system. And regardless of how we look at it or how we want it to be, we must recognize that through the annals of time, if you look at different nations, what you're going to find is that the attitude of the people at large is not any different than the attitude of the controllers of that nation. Look at what happened when Jesus was in the earth. The attitude and the tendency towards violence was the same. And what happened? The Romans came into Palestine, and the Romans removed the priests, and the Romans put a priest in charge to keep the people in line, and the Romans would kill anyone who challenged the Roman government. So during Jesus in this time, in this earth, physically, the same violence existed. And look at what Jesus did. One of the people who was there in Palestine to control the people and to mete out violence if necessary was a centurion. Yet Jesus healed the centurion's daughter. So Jesus' response to it was different than ours. Did he perpetuate violence? No, he didn't. Did he embrace it? No, he didn't. Peter cut off the air was replaced. So what I'm saying in essence is this. The way we are to deal with violence in this nation is not through voting. The way we are to deal with violence worldwide is not through voting. The way we deal with violence is by instituting the principles that Jesus left in this earth for us to follow. We make a claim to be Elohim, but our functionality and being Elohim does not show that we believe that we are Elohim, because the way we function is totally different than the way that everyone else functions in this earth. What am I saying? When we function as Elohim, we are the ones who are able to bring an end to the violence, but we don't function that way. We talk about it, we get upset about it, and we still go about our lives the same way. If you have any doubt about who you are, there is no way that you are going to be able to preserve anything, to change anything in this earth. You can't do that. It is not going to happen. If you have any doubt about who you are. Now, if you are consistent with who you are, if you stand tall about who you are, then you are able to change things. What am I saying? You cannot live the life of a mere man during the week and all of a sudden function as Elohim on the weekend while we are in these discussions. Every aspect of your life should be leaning toward who you are. Every second of your life, you are working toward being who you are. No man can look at the face of God and live, meaning that no one can look in that mirror and see who they are and still remain the same as they were before they realize who they are. Does that make sense? Am I talking to myself?
Very, very much, yes. Yes, it does make sense.
So what do we do about this? Violence did not exist simply because violence exists. And the attitude of violence that's persistent is not persistent because of the power of those who are perpetuators of violence. It's persistent because those who have been tasked to do something about it is not doing anything about it. We're so caught up in our everyday life. We're so caught up in all the programmatic things that we do until we not lose sight, but we don't make the efforts that's necessary to become functional as Elohim. What am I saying? When we started this journey, one of the things I said to Great New Faith was this: we will not have any more choirs. We will not have any more auxiliaries. Only thing that we are going to do is teach, because that's all Jesus did. I did not understand the veracity of what I was saying, but I knew that that it resonated deeply with me. I knew that it needed to be expressed. So what happened? The moment we start focusing on understanding what's in the scriptures without taking out the time to be religious, that is when everything began to change. That is when we started seeing more clearly what the scriptures are saying to us in this present time. Now, that goes to us individually. Also, when I was involved in the sector of religion, what happened? I would go to conventions, and I was a part of that group who was considered the shakers and the movers in the National Convention as well as the State Convention. At one point in the National Convention, there were those who came to me, and they were going to put me in position so I would be in line to become the president of the convention eventually. And what happened? I came home from that convention, and I heard this voice saying to me, I did not, would you mute your phones, please? I heard this voice say to me, I did not call you to be a political preacher. I could not be the president of that convention. I called them and told them to withdraw my name. Why? Because if I had been president of the convention, my time would have been spent doing religious things. My time would have been spent doing the things that I felt was right, as opposed to doing the things that were right. I would not have had the opportunity to become aware of who I am, because my vision would have been seeing who I thought I am. The president of that convention, 24/7, is the president. And you do a lot of traveling, a lot of speaking, but you do no studying. And so what I'm saying is that not only is it the collective responsibility, as it was when I spoke to Great Faith about the auxiliaries and quads, etc., but it's also our individual responsibility to make sure of one thing if we make sure of nothing else. And that is that our top priority is to function as Elohim in this earth. And nothing takes away from that. Does that make sense? That has to be our top priority. Why? Because until that becomes our top priority, we have not died to self. That makes sense. Questions about that? Comments? We have not died to self. When you die to self, you become consistent in your thought process, in your actions, in everything about you that allows you to see more clearly with the eye who you are and become more functional as Elohim. And what I mean by seeing with the eye is experience. Yesterday when I was talking about seeing with the eye, the thing that I said about that is that the third eye does not function the way our eyes function. The eyes see because of the light that projects the image to our brain. That the spiritual eye does not function like that. The third eye is an experience. You see through it. When Jesus says, I see what my Father says, I experience what my Father says, it resonates with me. That's seeing with the third eye. That's the experience that we have when we see with the third eye. Is that clear? Or are there questions about that? Because you have a question. Okay. Are there questions about that? So what I'm saying to us is this. At some point, we must sit with ourselves and do an introspection of what we are committed to. We can't be committed to jobs. Jobs are simply there for your sustenance. Only reason you're there to get a check so you can pay bills. Am I right? We can't be committed to this society because it's so corrupt. We can't be committed to corruption. Our commitment must be to becoming functional once we are aware of who we are. Functioning that way, period. Questions or comments? I'm done, I think. Ron?
Yes, sir. Questions or comments, anyone? I brought that up, and I don't think I'm finished with that yet. Sometimes when we talk about things, it still kind of leaves a question mark in me. The couple of scriptures come to mind, and I agree with everything Pastor said, but I still think there's something more to this, and I don't know what that more is. But I think that scripture that speaks of when God says, "Who will I send?" and Isaiah says, "Send me." I think we are that spirit. We've talked about that, and that scripture that talks about Jesus said, "I didn't come to set things straight. I came for division. Came to create division," and I think a lot of that is taking place too. With me looking at things from all of the discussions that we've had about femininity and energy and spirituality and the soul, uh, it's something more that I don't see yet about a black woman destroying the womb that she came from. There's something more to that, and I don't see it yet. So if you guys don't mind, I may bring that up again at some point to look at that. But that
I'll,
just kind of struck me.
I'll speak to that now. Two things. One, when Jesus talked about bringing, I came to create a division. He was not talking about dividing people from each other. He was talking about dividing our understanding of who we are, meaning that put enough space. Thank you. Meaning that put enough space between who we have been, as opposed to who we are supposed to be, so that we could have a clarity. We could see the difference between the two. That's the division. It was never a division between male and female. It was never a division between what we call races at all. It was division internally. So we could have that mirror image. When it comes to killing the black womb, this is not about an individual person whose skin is black. This is not about an individual person who is of African descent. This is about the person who buys into the violent nature of the society in which they live. This is what you are speaking of, Ron, in terms of a black woman doing that. The mind of that woman has bought into what society is projecting. And what society is projecting is that life is cheap, and black life is cheaper. So it's not about a race thing in terms of her killing her mom. It's about a European thought, the way we process, the way we have been taught to process. There is no difference, even though it is a violent act, there is no difference in that woman buying into that mindset and committing that crime than it is for Tim Scott to deny that there's systemic racism. Both of those are violent, and both of those are mindsets that is not pervasive in the African community. Those are mindsets that have been bought into, that have been projected by the Greco belief of what a government or what a society should look like. Does that make sense? Or does that help you, Ron?
It makes, it does. It makes sense. And I like I say, I agree with what you said when you were summing that up first time. Let it rest with me for a minute. And
okay.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? I'm sorry, I cut something off.
Charles has a question.
What happened when we got integrated into them, and why our minds and our focus don't shift the way they think?
Okay. This must be very important because something came up, a question like that yesterday. I had to address this yesterday. We never integrated, ever. We assimilated. Integration is when you take yours and mix it with mine. When you do your due diligence and we've combined our systems. That's how business does it. In a community, it means that you would still have your Black Wall Street. It would simply been a part of the general country. The economy of the country would have embraced that if it had been integration. We assimilated. And assimilation is when you take on the attributes of the other people. You begin to want to be like them. You try to assimilate into their society. You know, and let me give you an example of that, how awful this is. Do you know why African people to this day love Cadillacs? I'm serious. Because when Cadillacs were being sold in the beginning, they would not sell a Cadillac to black folks. They had to get somebody white to buy a Cadillac for them. That's assimilation. Everything. Look at the churches. Before we had Sunday school classroom, white folk got them first. Then they got family life centers, and we got them too. We ain't got no families. Everything. So that's assimilation. Our high school, I had to fight in union to keep them from destroying, to tearing down our high school. That's assimilation. The school that we were in, our high school, was 14 years old. The white high school was built in the 20s or earlier. So who had the better school? Theirs was structurally unsound. Ours was sound, but they closed ours. That's assimilation. Assimilation is when everything African is destroyed, and everything Caucasian is what exists, and you buy into that. So we never integrated. And when King realized what happened, this is what you would never hear on Martin Luther King Day. Martin Luther King regretted leading black folk into integration. He said, the greatest disservice I did to my people was to lead them to integration. I would do it differently if I had to do over again. You will not hear that during Martin Luther King Day. He regretted that when he realized that all that happened is everything we had was destroyed. So, having said all of that, when you assimilated, that meant that your education was no longer influenced by your community. Black teachers, they were no longer influenced by your community. They were 100% influenced by the enslavers. Can you see that? Let me show you something else. Ron sent me an article on Federal City College, college that I graduated from in D.C. And it reminded me of something. And it fits with what we're talking about now. Federal City College was the first land-grant college in this country. And the monies were allocated for this school for the purpose of giving opportunity to inner-city Africans in D.C. to go to school. It was $75 a quarter. And the open lottery was to take, they expected 2,000 to apply. 20,000 kids applied the first year. Federal City College became a mecca for African education. Everybody who was involved in civil rights during that period came through Federal City College. Whether Fannie Lou Hamer, Stoker Carmichael, Brown, all of them came through Federal City College. That school lasted no longer than Sims High lasted, approximately 14 years. They closed it. And the reason they closed it is because it was teaching Africans about themselves. I had a math teacher who taught algebra, and he would use subsets, and in those subsets, instead of using apples and oranges and stuff like that, he would talk about tribes, the Zulu, etc. Everything was incorporated from Africa. And we had people who left, mathematicians who left the NASA program to teach at Federal City College. because they wanted to be a part of educating our people. So what did they do? On the campus of Howard University, there was something called DC Teachers. It used to be minor teachers college because it was educating black teachers, females. But when it became a co-ed, it was DC Teachers College on the front part of Howard University. Howard University students treated DC teacher students like they were nothing. So what they did, Washington Tech was a technical school that taught black kids how to fly a plane. One of my friend's brother was a teacher at that school. He taught flight school. I had flight school there. They were taught how to repair planes, not just how to build a house. So they took Federal City College and DC Teachers and Washington Tech and merged them into the University of District of Columbia, and everything I just described to you was gone. All those programs were eliminated. And if you go on that campus today, you would think you're at the University of South Carolina, because you don't see us. They moved it up to the Gold Coast. Well, they moved it up Connecticut Avenue, away from, as far away from the African communities as they could get it. And you will tell me they didn't close it, that they merged? Every time that this government merges something, everything merges with it except us. Every time. There is no such thing as the preservation of anything African on this earth. Everyone is to destroy that. Why? As long as you have a reprobate mind, that's what you're going to do. Meaning, as long as you are religious in your thought, you are still enslaved. Because everything that you learn religiously are the same things that were taught to you to keep you a slave. You learn nothing spiritually. The spiritual aspects of the scriptures says to us, you must forgive. You cannot hold any regret or anger in your heart based upon what you have gone through. If we are to change the mindset of humanity, we see these things, but we don't see them as something that was done to us so bad until we have to seek revenge. Yahweh says revenge belongs to it. The deliverer, if revenge is the Lord's, right? Then what is revenge? Deliverance. Yahweh is the one who delivers, isn't it? If revenge is God, if you want to say that, Elohim, then what does Elohim do? Create. So revenge is never about doing to someone what they did to you. Revenge is about making them better. And you can't make people better until you change mindset. But your mindset must be the first thing you change. Is that clear? Your mindset. Otherwise, guess what? You're going to be in the same ditch that you've always been in. You think that you're out of the ditch because you're living a better life than your neighbor or a better life than you did growing up. You think you're out, but you're not. Because it's not about what you see or acquire materially. It's about who you are. It's about how you interact with your fellow man. It's about how you feel about the person who hates you and calls you a nigger. How do you feel about that? What is your experience with that? What's your emotional response to that? If you see those who are doing that as simply being that's just a sick puppy, we need to change that heart set so they can become human. That's different. That's different than what we have been taught revenge is. Spiritual revenge is so powerful until it alters everything without the ones being altered even know they're being changed. And I go to this example again. I used to yesterday was the response to something I don't know what it was. The power that we have, that's the whole thing. The power that we've been created with, we don't have an inkling of what it looks like to express it because we're not looking for it. We are still looking for exposure. What more needs to be exposed before we start fixing it? Huh? How do we fix it? We can't say that we're going to live, or I hope I'm going to live to see the day when this happens. That's future. You live in the now. It's done. We just have to be the manifestation of it. We have been given an opening to do this. We have not yet taken advantage of it. And if there are any questions, please stop me and raise your question. We have not taken advantage of it. When George Floyd died, I'm sorry, let me straighten that out because he didn't die. When they murdered George Floyd, what did his daughter say? 6 years old. She said, my daddy is going to change the world. Now, when she said that, we said, how cute or how powerful. Either way you looked at it. But did we look at it this way? When she said, my daddy going to change the world, what happened? There were more white kids protesting George Floyd than black kids. There has never been an outpouring of protest around the world like it was when he was murdered. So what does that mean to us? That means that humanity was open to receive a change. You know why that change has not been manifested? It's because we haven't changed. If we are the ones who brought everything to a place of exposure, then we are the ones who are supposed to bring harmony into the earth. But we can't have harmony in the earth until we have harmony within. And we can't have harmony within as long as if Roy's trucking business is his main focus, he'll never have harmony. Why? Because he's always distracted. Always distracted. Let me show you how deeply I feel this, and I got you, okay? Let me show you how deeply I feel about this. Stevie's illness breaks my heart, but I cannot allow it to distract me from who we are and our responsibility in the earth. Why? If I were to do that, it would be worse. I have to. You cannot. If someone is ill and you are working, you still focus on your job because you got to support them, right? So let's look at this spiritually. If you are spiritually the spiritual strength that Elohim is, then my focus has to be on being more clear to me in an awareness of who I am. And that gives the essence of my presence. to bring strength to the circumstance that I'm facing. Does that make sense? But if I shift my focus to the illness, then I'm giving life to it. Does that make sense? The power is in us. Kathy?
And someone take you back.
Wait one second. I can't see the rest of you guys. So if you got a question, raise it. Just stop me. I just, yeah. Okay.
And I want to take you back to the scripture that you just referenced about vengeance is mine, that's the Lord. And when you said deliverance, that resonates with me. I've never seen it that way. But then the rest of that says, and I will repay.
Mm-hmm.
Based on what you just said, what does the I will repay look like? What does that mean?
I'm not even sure that repay is there. However, if vengeance is deliverance, so what is it that you can give to me if I am the one who enslaved you and I am the Mitch McConnell who perpetuated it? And vengeance is deliverance. So what is the greatest thing you can give me? Think about it. What is the greatest thing you can give me? An understanding of who I am. Peace of mind, don't get it. Because you can have a peace of mind and be just as wrong as two left shoes. Awareness of who I am. If Mitch ever becomes aware of who he is, that's the greatest thing that he can ever receive. Does that make sense? And how does he do that? The only way he can do that is by being delivered. That's what I'm talking about. Any questions about that? Anyone else? Questions or comments? Say again.
My question is, when you were saying about Roy, when you were saying about Roy Job, his business,
Yeah. That's okay, Charles. Is that one? Something's wrong with that one. That's okay. Charles, just ask the question, I will repeat it.
anyway, it's almost like what God said. Who do you love? Do you love me, or do you love that type of business or that woman? What you love the most? It's just like what I pulled in there when you were talking about Roy.
Okay, yeah. So you're asking, is it like, when I talked about Roy and his trucking business being the single focus, right?
Yeah.
Is it like saying who you love the most?
Right.
It's absolutely that. Because think about this. If you don't love Elohim more than you love your stuff, then you don't love yourself. Because if you Elohim, right, you love stuff more than you do yourself. The scripture says, how can you say that you love me and hate your fellow man who you see every day? It's impossible for you to hate someone without hating yourself. If that is not true, then there is no way that we are one. If humanity is one, and the only reason we see that we are not is because our individual bodies. If we are one, then it is impossible for you to hate Mitch McConnell and love yourself. Because he's you and you are him. And the responsibility for you being in the earth is to do what? To bring order to it. The functionality of Elohim is bringing order to humanity. It's bringing into existence a type of harmony that the earth has never experienced. All of these things that we look at, when Roman's talking about the horrific murder of the mothers, the girl's mother and mothers, when he was talking about the horrific violence that's displayed in our society, it's for a reason. Yes, we have empathy, but at the same time, it gets your attention. Why does it get your attention? For you to do something. What are you going to do? Well, yes, but it's not going to change that. It may ease things to a point where we can work through so we can reach humanity, but it's not going to change it. If you don't change it, it's not going to change. You are the Adam. You're the Adam who stands in the gap. And the gap that you are standing in is not a gap between this country and another country. No. The gap that you are standing in is the gap that gives opportunity to transform from a religious state of mind to a spiritual state of mind. And I promise you that most of the people in this earth who read the scriptures have no clue of what spirituality is. Because, let me give you an example. I was told by a preacher that you know what you know because you're smart. You read all the time. And I told them I've been smart all my life, but I didn't know this. You can take a concordance and you can look up every word in a verse and still can't put together what it means spiritually. The only way you are able to do that is if you allow the Spirit to guide you, your soul to guide you to understand. Now, let me show you what that was saying. I'm teaching, and I'm in a church in Union, and this white preacher and his folks are there, and it's a black church, and I'm teaching. And I deal with the scriptures, and I'm told that because I'm using the original language to get my understanding, that I'm intellectualizing the scriptures. How can that be? If you read a poem that was written in Spanish and you translate it to English, you have lost the flavor if you don't understand the linguistic structure of Spanish. So if I'm looking at the Aramaic and the Hebrew and looking at the linguistic structure of it, now I understand the flavor of what's being said. Intellectualizing it is when you philosophize by putting together a lot of flowery words, a lot of fluff, explaining what you think it ought to be as opposed to what it is. That's what we are up against. We are up against a mentality of religion that thinks when you look for the truth, you are intellectualizing. But as long as you live on the peripheral of truth and have the sprinkling of it, you're fine. You're being spiritual. If all it takes to be spiritual is for somebody to hoop and you to shout, then we're in good shape. Things should have changed a long time ago. But the problem is the ones who took Christianity and used the Bible to enslave us and to convince us that we are nothing are the ones who have actually embraced the shouting and the hooping and the running up and down the aisles. Why? Because they know it doesn't lead you anyplace. They know that. Hooping was never intended for entertainment. Hooping was a message from the preacher to slaves who were going to run away. The hooping was a message. In that hoop, he was telling them where to meet. Everyone in that congregation knew that when his voice shifted from speaking the word, and he started, that's when their ears perked up, because they knew that what was coming was a message to engage or to support someone who was going to escape. And he was telling them in that message where to meet. Just like that quote I showed you guys that's on the line on the site now, as a message that guided his runaway slaves through and told them what they needed to take, etc. And there's nothing that looks like it says anything other than it's a piece of quilt that's beautiful tapestry, but it's a message. That's what the hoop was. And now it's been transformed into entertainment because we've been taught to be entertained. No different than, you know, the jockey, the black jockey that sits in front of folk house. What happened with that? That jockey who sits in front of people's house was a message. Runaway slaves knew if that jockey was in that front yard, that was the safe house. But it's been turned into something of degradation to us. Now we look at it like, I don't want that Sambo in my yard. But that was the message. The watermelon. Watermelon was the primary crop for black folk. Southern black folk were getting rich from watermelon, selling watermelon and building communities. Until they start, white people put in the newspaper and drew us with thick lips, watermelon juice falling off our face, and now we became embarrassed to eat watermelon. And the industry dried up. You see where I'm coming from? Now guess what happened? As soon as it dried up, who started selling watermelons? To us. So all I'm saying is this. Everything that sends a message to us, we have abandoned it because we have not looked into what it means. We have not looked into the origin of it to understand what it means. No different than the reality that we have not looked into the scriptures to understand what's being said. We have embraced everything that's been told to us as opposed to what we have learned for ourselves. We have to do the necessary research to understand what's being said in order for us to truly embrace who we are. Questions, comments? I'm done, Ron.
I had a couple questions for you from something you said yesterday. You want to pause here, or do you want to go into it? It's been over an hour. What do you think?
Well, let's take a poll, because it's only 2 questions.
Well, it's only 2 questions, but you know how.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I did not get a chance to listen to the whole CD, but you were talking about the earth fighting back, and you mentioned some examples of what things we see, the earthquakes and whatnot. We talked about greed and selfishness and all those things causing a problem. I'm looking at this from the perspective of the earth being consciousness, and I'm wanting to see what that looks like. I could understand it, and I see it in a practical sense. But open that up a little bit more and let me see that the consciousness is the things that we are aware of and the things that we value. Present that to me a little differently so I can see that, please.
Well, when we're talking about the earth pushing back, what I was saying is that the earth has been pushed in a corner. And what we are calling dangerous weather patterns and what we're calling climate change is the earth fighting back. The earth is a living, breathing organism. It has been proven scientifically that the earth pulsates, the earth breathes. And every organism gets to a place where it is tired of being abused. And it begins to fight back for survival. And the phone is ringing. The earth is fighting for survival. When we see earthquakes, when we see a killer whale volcano, when we see the storms, it's the earth saying enough is enough. Now, you cannot win the war against the earth. The earth fighting back will destroy us. Think about it. Now, how does that fit into earth consciousness? What is that saying? Earth consciousness is the type of energy that dominates the earth. It is an awareness that's dominant in the earth. The awareness that's dominant in the earth is what? Money. A desire for money. Hatred. Those are the predominant energy, thoughts of energy in the earth. Why are they predominant? Because those who have the power to change that have not done it. They're bought into that. Everybody's trying to get some more. Everybody's trying to reach a status, but they haven't bought into that. So when I talk about earth consciousness, what I am saying is this, that the current consciousness of the earth is antithetical to spirituality. There is nothing in the earth consciousness, in the energy of the earth at this moment, that responds to spirituality. We're on the verge of bringing it into fruition. What am I saying? The manifestation of it has not come yet because we have not manifested. Our consciousness is same as the earth consciousness. 98%, as I said yesterday, and these are arbitrary numbers. We live in a world where we are 98% earth conscious or religious and 2% spiritual. Think of something that's important to you. I want every one of you who under the sound of my voice, whether you're listening now or later, think about what's important to you, not your family, not your job. What's important to you? Something that you engaged in. I said about Roy's trucking business, right? That kind of thing. What's important to you? What's the most important thing to you outside of spirituality? Have you, when you got it, let's say I got it. Have you arrived at that understanding yet? Do you have any in your mind? Huh? What about you that I can't see? Have you given any thought to that? Hello?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes.
Now, this is what I want you to do with that. Stop doing it. Stop doing it in favor of spirituality, in favor of being aware of who you are. Now, how did that make you feel? Seriously, how did it make you feel? There was some kind of way about that, right? I did too. when I first came to that conclusion. That's the one thing that's standing between you and becoming the essence of who you are and reversing the 98 and 2%. That's who you, that's the thing. Question? Does that make sense? Any questions? That's the thing that's standing between you. Whatever it is, the thing that was standing between me, you know what it was? Prestige. I was sitting in a high seat of power. When I was in politics, when I was back in the day, I was involved in civil rights. Well, I never was involved in civil rights in that sense. I was always the African nationalist. So when I was involved in the Pan-Africanist movement, the high seats of power. I've always been in that power structure. I've always been at the table with the Stokelers and the Rap Browns. I've always been there. I've always been there. When I was called into ministry, I was always at the table with the seats of power. Offered opportunity to be the Sunday school director, the president of Sunday School Convention for the state, and refused it. And everyone in here who knows anything about the Baptist Church know who took it, who became it. I refused it. Same thing with the National Convention, refused it. Those are the things I had to get rid of. The offer from TBN to be on TBN and be a millionaire in less than a year, but not more than a year. A check for $100,000 land on the table for me to take at that moment that was mine with no strings attached. I had to walk away from it. I had never in my life made $100,000 in a year. And there it was on the table. I had to walk away. Those are the things. So the question becomes, now that you have thought about that one thing in your life, are you willing to sacrifice it to be who you are? Don't answer to me. Answer to yourself. Because guess what? Telling me doesn't change anything. Telling yourself does. Any questions or comments about that? I know it's a challenge, but if it was not a challenge, it would already be done. So I just ask you. I'll do it.
Same thing when Paul wanted for Jesus was on the island.
No, you're talking about the Isle of Patmos.
Yeah.
You're talking about John.
Yeah, he was saying going inside.
No, that was Paul. He wasn't on the Isle of Patmos.
He was saying my worst thing is this thorn in my side, and we find out the thorn in the side of the people was always taking it.
Yes, that was our conclusion to that. That the thorn in his side. So what's the thorn in his side is different than what I'm talking about. Plus, everything that Paul wrote is suspect. We have to look at it more than once. You know, when we talk about the scripture, I say, read the scriptures again for the first time. With Paul, read it again for the 50th time. Because if you read what Paul wrote, you will find direct contradictions to what Jesus taught. Paul said, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Did he not? Paul said that the God that was being, the idol God that was being worshipped on Mars Hill was the God, it was the one God that all men worship. But the scripture says there should be no images made of me. So Paul said you can't come into this building without your head covered. Did he not? So if a woman has to come into the building with her head covered, then what we are doing is separating femininity from masculinity, and we are saying that masculinity is dominant because masculinity doesn't have to make any changes to come into the presence of God. And that is just as crazy as it is when preachers say that women should not be pastors or preachers because when their ministry cycle is on, that is an abomination, and they should not be standing in the pulpit, which is holy ground, because they're administrating. That's where all that came from, the justification against female preachers. That is dumb. Not only is it dumb, it's disrespectful. Not only is it disrespectful, it is an abomination to God to even say that, because where did your ministry cycle come from? You didn't wake up one morning and say, you know what, all women are going to have a ministry cycle. You were created with that for a reason. That makes no sense. So that when I say the writings of Paul have to be read suspect, because when you look at the writings, they are detrimental to femininity, to females. And that is the reason evangelicals and Catholics love Paul, because it makes them dominant. And I know we're being recorded, and anyone who listens, if you don't have my number, find me. We can talk about this. That's why Paul is the one. Paul says, return to your master, slave, and basically apologize for leaving, for running away, and serve him. That was used to justify slavery. That's why, what did I say to you guys? Pay attention to what's in the red. Read what's in the red. Don't worry about the rest. Because what have we done since then? What we have seen since that is the red has enough righteous understanding for us to embrace and hold on to who we are and be what we were created to be. Everything else is commentary on what Jesus said. The very books that coincide with everything Jesus said were taken out by the Catholic Church. Thomas, Book of Mary, Enoch, all these books were taken out. I'm done. Unless there are questions. Well, what is it? You got that furrow in your brow, like. Okay. Any questions? Comments? Ron?
Yes, sir.
Does that help?
It does indeed. Thank you.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had a second one. It's kind of a thought.
Oh,
and
you.
Huh?
Go ahead.
Okay. The other one you were talking about, and I didn't hear the end of this discussion. You were talking about the man being placed east of Eden, and I had done some research on this several years ago, and we know that Eden means pleasure. East part though is what part that kind of pulls this thing together a little bit, I guess. So East not only talks about sunrise, it talks about beginning and newness. And so the article, or not the article, but the thing that I read on it, the book that I read on it was talking about the journeys of men, because all of it means something, whether you go south, west, north, all of it is a destination that men travel. But what it's saying is we all go in search of our pleasures, but we end up back in the East. we end up back in the east. So no matter what direction you head in, you're really going east because you're going to end up back at your beginning. So those pleasures, it came back to say most of us learn to search for our pleasures externally, but true pleasure is found internally, and it's when you find yourself, when you realize who you are, when you realize what it means to be one with Elohim and being one with your fellow man, is when your true pleasure starts. But it is not to be found from an external place. When you search for that, you basically lost or walking in darkness when all you do is search for pleasure. So that was just something, when I listened to the seed, something that kind of came to me, something I looked at earlier.
East of Eden. It did not say the garden was in Eden. We called it the Garden of Eden, the Garden of Pleasure. The scripture clearly says it was east of Eden, which means that the garden is separate from your pleasures. Lay your pleasures on the side and see where you are. Do an introspection and see who you are at that moment. Who are you? Separate from those pleasures, those things that pleasure you in this earth. You say you have desires. Your desires are fulfilled when you delight yourself in the Lord. When you find your pleasures in deliverance, that's when that's where your pleasures are separate from your external pleasures. What am I saying? When we talk about it being east of Eden, the sun rises in the east. So the sun, based upon Cushites, the Egyptians, the sun we know the sun is the source of all life. We know that, right? Nothing can live in this earth without the sun. So the sun, you cannot look at the sun without being blinded by the sun. The scripture says that no man can look at the face of God and live. So it is a reminder. I'm sure I understand. Oh my God. That's on my watch. You cannot, the scripture says you cannot look at the face of God and live. The light enlightenment is so bright until it changes you. You can't see enlightenment. You can't, when I say see, I'm talking about experience enlightenment without dying to self. When it says look at God and die, you can't look in his face and die. It's talking about you dying to self. It's talking about you dying to all those things that you thought you were and becoming who you were created to be. So this brightness is that. And the sun, the source of all life in the earth, is a reminder to us of our beginnings, of who we are. And it is written, based upon evangelical or Catholic Christianity, that Ra is a pagan god. Ra in Egypt was not someone being worshipped. The Egyptians understood that the sunlight was, as I described it to you, and all these things that they called God were not being worshipped. They were expressions of the different attributes of God, of the Creator. And the sun is an expression of that. The sun is a physical representation of a spiritual reality. And the spiritual reality is that our Creator, actually Ein Sof, which is light itself, is the source of everything that is. And the sun is a reminder to us of that. So that is the reason the garden is east of Eden, separating from those pleasures. Now, the garden is protected by a flaming sword, right? You cannot enter the space of the garden to understand who you are without first being purified. What does that mean? How long has it taken us to understand what we do understand now, and it's just a thimbleful? How long has it taken us to get to this place where we can be in this garden? The reason that it says a flaming sword, one thing, it says that the word is like a two-edged sword, cutting right and left, right? The fire is a purification process, and the sword is a sharpened object that cuts. So what does the cutting do? It separates you from the words that you learn in religion and the words of spirituality, which are true. And there's a thin line between those two. Does that make sense? Ron?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So that's where we are. Any other questions? Charles, you had a comment. I'm sorry.
No,
You good?
I'll get ready to tell you that everybody know about Monday and the holiday.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Before we get off, there's something I need to tell you guys, okay? Any questions or comments? Okay. What we have done in the past, we don't meet on holidays, right? We will not meet Saturday or Sunday of next week, neither will we meet Monday. Because the most important holiday to us is Juneteenth.
Okay.
If we don't respect it, who gonna respect it?
All right.
4th of July does not belong to us. We were murdered when we tried to celebrate our independence on the 4th of July, when the enslaved people in New York were freed in 1790-something. And they celebrated their freedom on the 4th of July. Mobs of white people beat and bludgeoned them to death and shot them and said, "You niggers are not going to take our holiday." It doesn't belong to us. And here we are, the oldest holiday that we have. We do everything we want to do except celebrate it. On the other holidays, spend time with your family because you can, but it doesn't mean you're embracing the holiday, because it doesn't include you.
Okay.
So Saturday, Sunday, and Monday is Juneteenth, okay? That's our respect that we are going to show for this holiday, because guess what that holiday says? That holiday speaks to unity among the Africans like no other. Because Juneteenth was first known as Emancipation Day. And the reason it was embraced by everyone else, the Africans who were free from enslavement, the reason it was embraced by all Africans is because the understanding was this: until they are free, none of us are free. That's why. And even with Juneteenth, 1865, slavery still existed. The last case I read about slavery was a slave, someone being enslaved, was in 1962 in Mississippi. And I'm sure that it lasted longer than that. So that's our honoring of our ancestors who paid the ultimate price for us to be in a position to deliver humanity right now. That's what I want to share with you. And with that, I bid you a great day. And any questions that you may have that comes later, please make a note of them. And week after next, we will discuss them. Have a great day.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day, everybody. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you so
everybody.
much for the beautiful